Hello, welcome to the Abyss. This is Daath Nihilus. Today's episode, I am proud to present a very special guest. I am going to be having on the great and badass Warrior Witch Nike. They are a co-host of Magnolias and Magic, and they are a... Hello, let me send you an invite. Here we go. I believe I sent you an invite.
Hi.
Hello. Welcome to this.
We got there. We got there.
Yep.
All right. I hear we're just doing intros and stuff. Hi, everybody.
Yep.
Okay, how do you Yeah, you go.
Okay, I want to ask this first question. So you are Norse pagan. You're co-host of Magnolias and Magic. Um, but you're also really into astrology, which I find very interesting because I am such a noob when it comes to astrology. I mean, the only thing I really have a good grasp on is my sun sign.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so I thought, I would kind of pick your brain a little bit, and also use that as an opportunity to help beginners interested in astrology to know a little bit about how to start out on that journey, that kind of path and stuff. So what got you into astrology in the first place?
So, getting into astrology, I've always been at least a little bit interested in it because I very much feel like my sun sign. I'm very strongly Gemini, and when I look at my chart, I have a stellium there, which is 3 planets, so it always just felt right. But especially as I got into witchcraft, I just kept seeing more and more stuff about it, and it seemed so fascinating to have all of these extra details that you could pull in and the way that everything interacted. And I was always a little bit of a math kid. I really liked algebra, which might be a little weird for like witches and stuff, but I don't know. I just like having all those details and being able to pull them together to get so specific with everything that you can look at and all the techniques. There was just so much information that you could use to discern things and the ways that you could use it. It's such a versatile type of divination that it just drew me to it.
Okay, I want to go a little off script here and ask, how does algebra connect with astrology?
So I always felt like algebra versus geometry, you either like one or the other. But I like the equations, and it feels very much like an algebraic equation where you have like planet in sign, aspecting planet in sign, both in houses, and then when you add like transits or synastry or things like that, you start getting all these layers to it. It feels a lot like these really complicated math problems, but you can follow the logic step by step and see this piece and this piece and this piece and where they all go to and how you reach that final conclusion. So it always felt like that same thing.
Okay, now transits, that's the orbit of the planets within the chart itself.
Yeah, so transits are how the planets are moving. You can see this most quickly with the moon. So the moon changing signs basically every 2.5 days. So it transits through a sign, it transits through your houses. And so often when we're referencing transits, it's meant to be in relation to some other chart. So it could be like having a transit in relation to the United States' chart, or in relation to a personal chart, or like the chart of a business, or the chart of a moment. And so that's when you look at the transits more, is in relation to other charts underneath.
Okay, all right. What aspect of astrology would you say is the most important?
Planets, for sure. Planets are the basis of
Planet.
everything. They are the rulers of the signs, and that's how we get a lot of the significations. They are the ones that are aspecting each other. They're the ones that are moving. They are the ones that, you know, as you get into more traditional astrology as well, you'll learn about the planetary joys, and so they affect the houses too. And so a lot of the logic that you can get for astrology overall is by going to the planets and just thinking of them in a different way. So, you know, what does Venus do in this way versus in this way? So like having a cardinal air Venus, Libra, versus a fixed Earth Venus, you know, so that kind of relationship and how everything fits together, you really have to understand the planets in order to understand anything at all.
Okay, and what's the difference between fixed and um, its opposite?
So it doesn't really have an opposite because there's three. So there's cardinal, mutable, and fixed. And so those describe, if you go with tropical astrology, it's the part of the season. So fixed is right at the middle. So like Leo is a fixed fire sign. It's the middle of the summer. It's fully going to be summertime. Cardinal is the start of a season. So if you have like cardinal air or cardinal fire or whatever, it's the beginning of that season. So when you have cardinal air, which is Libra, that is the beginning of fall. So you've transitioned. So you've got the fixed fully in, and then mutable is that between time. So you've got the fixed fire, and then you've got mutable earth, that's Virgo, and then you get into Libra, fully the beginning of a new season, but you still have those little remnants. It's just starting, it's just picking up, versus a fixed sign being right in the heart of it, nothing's changing. The entire time before and after is fully this season, and so you don't have any of those changes. And I think that we get a lot of mix-ups between cardinal and mutable because they can be seen as so similar, with like cardinal being starts and mutable being in between, because you're doing a lot of starting, but you're also doing a lot of ending by virtue of it being in the middle, because you have to be able to end things and start things together. So it's that limbo time versus actually like initiating the new project versus just getting ready to start that new project.
Okay. Um, so what is a conjunction?
A conjunction is when you have two planets that are basically directly on top of each other or within a few degrees. Typically, we say within 3 degrees is where they start to get the most intense, but some of them have what's called an orb, like a wider sphere of influence, so a little bit further away. The moon, for example, has a 13-degree orb, so you can say that a planet is conjoined with the moon when they're within 13 degrees, but other planets we look at 7 degrees or 5 degrees or things like that.
Um, what would you when you're reading a chart, what would you say is the most um, aside within the signs and stuff? What would you say is the most important aspect within when reading a chart?
Like just looking at a chart overall.
Yeah.
Hmm. Sect. So sect is day chart versus night chart because that will determine a lot of things. And you can easily find if it's a day chart or night chart if the sun is above the ascendant descendant line or below it. So if it's below that line, basically on the bottom half of the chart, it's a night chart. If it's on the top half, it's a day chart. Because which planets act most harmfully or most beneficially will change depending on if you're born at daytime or nighttime. So like I was born in the daytime, so for me, Jupiter does the most good and Mars does the most harm. But for somebody born at night, it would be the opposite. So Venus would do the most good and Saturn would do the most harm. And so, you know, how a planet interacts with your chart, how a transit's going to interact with your chart, even whether or not you might identify with your sun sign, that changes a lot of it. So the first thing that astrologers are usually going to identify is where is the sun, not to see what sign it's in, but just to see physically which half of the chart it's in, to then determine everything else.
Okay. Now, when it comes to like day and night, is it kind of like magic times where like day ends when like at sunset or dusk, and then it is it like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's weird iffy times where you are within, I think it's about 3 degrees of that ascendant descendant line, where it can be either way because it's that sort of limbo and it's so close. And so those charts, especially, you kind of have to study a lot and do a lot more work to see how the planets are affecting this person or this moment or whatever the chart is for. So it is a little bit more of that magical time where things can go either direction. But yeah, once you like fully dip above or below, it's completely shifting everything in the chart. So even a difference of 5 to 10 minutes could completely change everything.
Okay. And when it comes to planets, there are certain planets that will be malefic during the day, and then will be the opposite at nighttime, or is it kind of like day is good and night bad, or how does the reflections of that polarity work?
So the way that astrology works, the sun and the moon are basically seen as equals in a way. They're like the king and the queen, they both rule their own full half, and they have these really important equal roles to play. So it's not that night is good or bad, it's just that in relation to, one thing or another. So I think if you were looking, especially to do planetary magic, if you really wanted to use something for, benefit or ill, you could choose when you do your rituals daytime or nighttime. So if you're looking to do a working with Saturn, you could use Saturn more malefically or benefically daytime or nighttime, depending on what you're looking to do. And there's some logic behind it too. So Mars is most malefic during the daytime because it's already really hot and bright, and when you're in the daytime, it's like just adding more fuel to the fire. You're making it hotter and hotter and hotter. Whereas at night, Mars is able to act in a way that can be beneficial. So if you want to work with, irons and trades and things like that, if you want to bring in those influences, it can be beneficial. You just have to know how to work with it right. So Mars at night is able to be cooled down, so it can be tempered essentially. And Saturn's that same way. At night, Saturn is naturally very cold, very dark, so you're just freezing it even colder. You're bringing that temperature even further down. Whereas in the daytime, it gets tempered and it gets warmed up a little bit, so it can be a little bit more moderate. It's cooling versus freezing. So, the way that you're going to work with something can depend on what time of day you want to do it in, especially when it comes to planetary magic, and that is a consideration.
Okay, so basically, if you want to give somebody a magical hot foot, you'd want to work with Mars during the day, and if you wanted to do a freezer spell using Saturn, you'd want to do it at night.
Yeah, basically.
Okay. Um, let's see. Next question. What is the most versatile planet to work with magically?
This is going to change based on different people's opinions. I think, and it's a little classic witch of me, of course, but I think the moon, because the moon changes phases so quickly, it changes signs so quickly, and so if you really want to work with a particular planet in a bunch of different ways, especially if you want to do it relatively quickly, you can see those effects and how that changes and how you can, modify spell work with it. Throughout the month, throughout the year, and you've got a new moon and full moon in every single sign in 1 year. So you don't have to wait for everything to like go through retrogrades and take its time, and things take months. Like Mercury takes at least a month or so to get through a sign, if not longer, depending on retrogrades. So the moon can be most versatile because it doesn't go retrograde. It moves super quickly, and you can see those effects really prominently, especially because it's so much easier to see it. A lot of astrology has to do with sight and vision, and a big reason why the luminaries are so important is because they're the biggest, brightest thing in the sky during their time of day. So during the daytime, the sun is super bright. At night, the moon is super bright, and that's where you're going to see their influence the most by comparison with the stars. And we use the stars that we do because we can see them. They're the 7 traditional planets. They're the 7 wandering stars. They're the stars that we can observe with the naked eye and see them moving around. So that visual aspect, I think, is big. And with the moon being such a stunning visual, such a sharp contrast to everything else, I think that makes it really versatile to be able to see those effects of working with it more clearly.
Okay. And kind of touch a little bit on what you talked about. Now, is Mercury's not the only planet that can go retrograde?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all of them except the sun and the moon can go retrograde, and they do frequently.
Okay. All right. Also to the comment question, yes, we can see your messages.
Mm-hmm.
So you have any questions during the broadcast, feel free to ask them. The next question I have is, how does astrology fit into your practice as a Norse pagan?
So that's really interesting because, as far as we know with what we have in records and what we have that actually got preserved, we don't know that the Norse heathens, like the Norse pagans, had any history with astrology, they had a lot of, you know, navigation by stars, but we don't know that they had anything like astrology magically or anything like that. So for me, it's a little bit more of how the gods respond to the planets and those associations, and my eclectic practice of mixing like Norse stuff in with astrological stuff and all of that. And there are some that will tell you like this Norse god is associated with this planet, and it's not really necessarily a one-to-one the way it is for Greek and Roman gods, because they don't fully fit in perfectly in that way. Like you could associate Odin with Mercury, but you could make arguments for Jupiter or the sun, and there's a lot of ways that you could do that. Freya, you could obviously put with Venus, but there's a lot of different ways that she has associations with like Saturn, so you could put that in too. So they're not a one-to-one, but I think that makes it more interesting because you can see different sides of them as they work with planets. So I do a lot of mixing of like regular old Norse practice and planetary magic and astrology. So I mix it all together in a big boiling pot.
And that's really awesome, actually. Um, Now, how much of your practice would you consider uh, kind of like reconstructionist versus kind of eclectic?
Hmm. You know, that's a good question. I've never really thought about it in percentages. Maybe 50-50. I try to keep it pretty in the middle because I mean, a lot of what I'm doing is based in traditional sources and very old sources, but a lot of it is more modern, and by virtue of being alive today and having to translate it, it has to be modern. So, I mean, I try to keep it a good mix. It might be a little bit more leaning towards Reconstructionist versus the modern eclectic, but that sort of depends on the day and what specifically I'm looking to do.
Okay. All right. Next question. What kind of work is best used for malefic planets or transits?
In what way? Like when you're experiencing malefic transits, or when you want to work with a malefic transit?
Um, let's go with both.
Okay. When you're experiencing a malefic transit or dealing with a malefic planet, I would say trying to work with their opposite might be best, or whatever planet is best for you. It'll kind of depend on the circumstances. So if you have, where's Mars? If you have Mars in Libra, Mars is very unhappy in Libra. Maybe you want to try to lend it a little bit of support from Venus if possible, or maybe you want to try to add a little bit of solar element because they work together very well too. So if Mars is a little bit sluggish and slow and dim, maybe you want it to brighten up because it's not able to work the way it wants to. So if normally Mars for you is something that brings a lot of power and force and you're feeling a little bit, you know, drained and down and slowed, maybe adding heat to that could be, you know, why you go for the solar element, things like that. You kind of have to figure out where they are. But otherwise, just trying to temper them if they're acting malefically can sometimes be that help. If you want to work with them in a way that is malefic or baneful, you know, if you want to do some baneful workings, I would say to be careful because they can very quickly get out of hand. The planets will do what the planets will do, and once it's in motion, there's not a lot you can do to stop it. So more than just doing regular malefic stuff, when you involve the planets, especially the malefic planets, you really got to be careful. But just make sure you know which one is for best. And it doesn't have to be the malefic planets themselves. You can use Jupiter and Venus for harm too, or the sun or the moon. You know, you can do a lot of malefic work with each of them. It's just sort of a different style of malefic.
Okay. And how do the houses work?
So the houses are all determined based on your rising sign. So this would be when you're born. The moment that you're born or the moment that an event happens, it could be like when you create a business, when you initiated an action, whatever. The way that we get the rising sign is we look to the literal horizon and we see what star is on that horizon, what constellation is there, what is rising above, and that's your ascendant. So like I'm a Scorpio rising. When I was born, Scorpio was on the horizon. And so I work with whole sign houses. That means that all of Scorpio is my first house, even though my ascendant is not at 0 degrees, but 0 degrees is still considered my first house. And so that starts it off, and then you just go in zodiacal order. So like my second house would be Sagittarius, my third house is Capricorn, and you just count around in order until you get all the way around. So that's a really easy way. I always recommend whole sign houses for beginners especially, but also if you're going with traditional Hellenistic astrology, it's just the way that the tradition goes.
Okay. Um, what is the one thing that every beginner to astrology should know?
It takes a long time, so don't try to force it all in like even a year. Professional astrologers don't feel ready to even start giving readings until about 4 years in. And that's like, even then, they still feel like an imposter, even then, because they know the depths of what there is to learn in the practice. Even then, they're like, am I actually ready for this? So you probably won't start feeling competent until 2 years in because you're going to have to, float around. You might even have to play with different systems. You have to learn all this information. You have to synthesize it. How does it all work together? Like, not just the pieces, but also in conjunction with each other. You have to experience a lot of transits and see how those work and do a lot of chart study. So just take it really slow because, just like with witchcraft, just like with the occult, it's a lifelong thing. But astrology especially takes so much time. Like, you could be pretty competent at witchcraft or the occult, I'd say within a year or two. You might not be able to be so with astrology, and it's a lot of reading. It's a lot of like textbook type reading. It's so much information to bring in. And even if you're just studying, you're probably going to be writing a lot of notes. So just take your time with it, and it's okay to just be a novice for a while because there doesn't have to be this pressure to be immediately like ready to give readings.
Yeah. So basically, the advice is, don't read one book and think you're Nostradamus right out the gate.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay. Give me an example of how astrology has your impacted your personal life.
It's helped me prepare for a couple of things. I don't always know how it might be like specific. So if I can see a transit happening that might affect personal relationships or finances, I can be ready for it. So like if I see there might be a malefic transit happening with my finances, I might not know what that is. I might not know that, the reality is that I get in a car accident and have to spend a bunch of money in my car, or I break my leg and I have medical bills. Like, I might not know what it is, but I can know enough ahead of time to be like, all right, well, before that happens, I'm going to save a bunch of money. I'm going to be really careful. I'm going to do my best. And so when it hits, I can mitigate a little of that blow. So I just feel more prepared generally. I can prepare my heart in a sense to just be ready for whatever happens. And if I know that a specific pattern tends to bring up certain topics, I can be a little bit more prepared and know that topic's going to come up, and if I want to deal with it or not, and how I've dealt with it before, and just to be aware of those things. But it helps to feel like you're more in control of your life.
Okay. Um, I kind of want to go off on a different topic, but it's still within your expertise. I wanted to talk to you a little bit um, about your relationship with Norse paganism and stuff like that, because I know you're really in um, knowledgeable about that. Just trying to get the right word out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm much better at writing than I am speaking. Let's just put it that way. Um, my next question is what is the one Norse deity that you work with the most?
Right now, it's Freya and Odin, like both. I have both of them actually on my altar back here. So I've got, let's see, which side is that? Freya is on this side and Odin is on that side. So I've had them both on my altar for a while. I've thought about branching out a little bit, but I'm happy where I am right now. But I would say Freya more than Odin specifically. I've done more work with her, and I was with her first. But Odin's been pretty strong recently too.
There's one thing I've been kind of curious about. I know you've probably talked about it before, but I want to ask you this question. What is the significance of the jawbone?
It's so it was a gift from my friend Frankie, and it is what they used when they were working with Freya, and they've since said goodbye. It was a pretty public split. The time was over, and Freya was like, "All right, I've done all I can do for you, so bye." And Frankie knew that I was starting to work with Freya more seriously, and was like, "Hey, I have this. Do you want to have it?" And I was like, "Yes, absolutely. I definitely want it." And you might have seen me joke online sometimes about like, you don't wear the jawbone unless you want to fuck your shit up a little bit. And the reason I say that is because every time I wear it, she sends me challenges that are meant to push you to grow and to learn and to change, but they're always really, really hard and they're super stressful. And so I have to know that like I'm in a good place. I'm ready to take on more. Like I know it's going to be hard, but I'm okay with that. And so I'm very particular about when I choose to use it. Like I took the jawbone to a tournament once because I do the LARPing stuff. I do the fighting portion, and I brought it with me and I asked her for like wisdom to fight better and whatever. Like my intention was bring me wisdom to like do better in my combat. She said, I'm going to give you wisdom in the form of you're going to have to face one person who cheats, and then immediately after another person who cheats, and then immediately after this other person that you really hate who has like made you feel bad before, and like all on her own, no breaks, all of it right now, and you have to keep your temper. You can't get upset. So there you go. And I was like, cool, that's fine. It's fine. Everything's okay. So it was just like, it was so stressful, but it did help me that I like, it was begrudgingly, I admit, there's some wisdom in learning to navigate this, but also do I really have to? Do I have to learn it this way? Okay, I guess you say I do. So that's the jawbone for you.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of reminds me of some instances with my HGA. Um, it it would it would definitely put some pressure on me during certain points where like I was like so dead exhausted, so tired, and I didn't want to do any of my work, but it just kept putting the pressure on, and finally I just relented. Um, but yeah, I definitely feel that similarity with working with that. Um, what is I remember you mentioning working with Aphrodite.
Mm-hmm.
How did that come about?
That was pretty early into my like public practice, like when I had joined the community. And I originally wasn't sure how much I believed in the gods. Like I was sort of in that weird place between psych and spirit model, and I didn't know what all that was about. I was kind of hesitant to step into deity work because like, eh. And then it was just like, how do I put it? It wasn't like a voice really, but I had seen some particular photo that like it was a normal picture. There was nothing super special about it. But when I looked at it, something in my head felt like it was screaming the name Aphrodite. It was just like, this is her. Here she is. It didn't have anything to do with her. But my brain was just like, hello, someone's here, someone's knocking. And that's how that had started. And she was a big part of my journey actually in figuring out that I was non-binary too, because I'd always struggled a little bit with gender and feeling like too masculine to be feminine, but too feminine to be masculine. And I didn't know why. And so I'd come to her being like, help me figure this out, thinking it was going to be in the way of like feeling more feminine and beautiful. And she was like, no, you're going to feel like a man. Like you're going to feel super masculine right now. And you're going to learn that handsome is also a way that you feel beautiful. And it was just, and I've had that talk with other queer people of all flavors, like other non-binary people and gay people. And how it was just like, you're going to explore your femininity through masculinity. It was super weird, but it's such a specific experience. She was like, no, you don't have to feel beautiful in the feminine way. You're going to feel beautiful in a your way. And that was a big part of that, like learning that, non-binary was really more of what I was.
Yeah, when it comes to the psych and spirit model, I kind of see a blending of the two. I don't see one being um, particularly one way or particularly extreme, but I see it being more of an amalgamation. Um, Same with like masculine and feminine. I believe that masculine and feminine exists within all people, and it manifests in individuals by degrees. It's not either one or the other or a solid 50-50, you know?
Yeah.
And so yeah, how did you go from Aphrodite? How did you get into Norse paganism?
So that's kind of a fun story too, because it's also part of how I got into my practice in the first place. When I was in high school, I was at a friend's party, and this is one of my big catalysts to look into witchcraft in the first place. And they had brought over runes, and I was just for fun with the little booklet they had with them doing readings with the runes, but they actually turned out like pretty accurate. And so one of the first things I ever did was stuff related to Norse paganism, and it was years and years and years. And I wanted to start with Greek stuff when I really got into the witchcraft thing, because I grew up with that. You know, that's more typically what we looked into, and my whole family had, like, my brother really liked Greek and Roman myths and things like that, so it was always more of what I was exposed to. And it felt like I was resisting it for a long time, where Freya came screaming into my life, and then Odin came screaming into my life, and it just felt like I finally had to go, fine, okay, I get it, I'm supposed to be Norse pagan. And I still work with other gods from other pantheons, but a lot more of what my focus has gone into recently has been Norse paganism. Odin and Freya have been so loud. Freya put a random book about cats on my bookshelf that me and my then roommate, neither of us know where it came from. It just showed up one day. I even texted Olivia, because she had stayed with me during the time that I was at that place. I was like, did you bring a cat book when you came? And she was like, no, I don't know why. Like, so we had no idea where it came from. And it was like right when I was starting to maybe try to work with her. And then she also delivered a cat to my apartment. The little kitten I had for a long time. She came up because me and my roommate were like, we already have the one cat. We know we're going to move at some point. We're not going to go out and get a second cat before the move, because that would just be a lot of stress. If one shows up, we won't say no. And then one just showed up, literally screaming in the bushes at 8 in the morning when I worked nights. Like, I worked until 3 a.m. So woken up at 8 in the morning for her, just going like, ah, downstairs. And I had to go out and get her and bring her in. And she had feline leukemia, and she had not fleas, but she had ticks and mites and things like that. So we had to like do all this stuff to help her out. But she's like, no, you have to take her inside now. You said you would do it, so here's another cat. So it's just little stuff like that. And then Odin was like it was similar screaming, but in a different way from Aphrodite, where I was actually in the hold, and some of the hold people might remember this happening one night, where I was working with I thought it was Mercury. I couldn't quite tell, or Hermes. I thought it was Hermes, but it always felt a little off. Like, it wasn't quite right, and I didn't know why. And I was like, this is a little odd. And then just out of nowhere, when I was in the whole server, and I was like, what if it's actually Odin? I mean, he has been known to use other names, other faces, and things like that. And everyone was just like, oh my god! So we were just like, I see you, old man. I know that you're here. I got it. So that's just what it was.
Nice. Okay, Yantry 13 says, how and where would Hecate fit within such stuff?
Hecate is interesting. If we're talking astrology, Hecate definitely fits into it. Her mother has relations to astrology. She, has all these connections to magic and things like that. So she fits into my practice perfectly fine when I'm actively working with her. And she's one of those ways that I didn't fully detach from Greek paganism, where she always stuck around regardless, but she's never been fully like a Greek god, because technically she's not. She's a Titan, number one, but there's theories that she may have been a wanderer god, like Dionysus is a wanderer god, and he might not necessarily have been originally part of the pantheon and then got adopted in. He's called like a foreigner god. So she's kind of that same thing, where she's not technically a god, but she's powerful enough and respected enough by the other gods to be like brought in. She helped the gods to defeat the Titans. And so, she kind of just does her own thing. And so she just sort of picks whoever she wants to be around and is like, hey, you and me now. Okay, this is what it is. And so it's one of the ways that I stay pretty eclectic is when I work with her. She doesn't seem to mind so much the other stuff mixing in, because she doesn't really necessarily care if you stick to a rigidly Greek system or not. She just says, you work with me in the way you work with me, and that's all I care about.
Okay. So do you work better with runes than you do with tarot, or how, which divination system do you prefer?
I mean, it kind of depends on the day. I I think I like runes for different reasons. I like tarot for more direct answers that I need a lot of detail on, but I like the runes if I need it to. Uh, maybe I can put it this way: tarot is writing a book. Runes are painting a picture.
Okay. And my next question kind of goes along with that. What is your favorite tarot deck to use?
I actually let me go grab it. I think I should have it on the shelf behind me. It's gorgeous.
It's time for show and tell, kitties.
So this is called the Golden Nouveau Tarot. It's gorgeous. I'm a sucker for gold leaf and things like that. Let me make sure I have a stream appropriate one because some of them are not stream appropriate. We'll go with this one. So it has reflective gold. I don't know how well you can see that, but
Nice.
I think that the illustration style is really pretty. So I've always liked the Art Nouveau style, and every picture, every tarot card is just its own kind of unique and gorgeous, and they all have the gold foil on them. I'm in love with this deck. I think it's so beautiful and so special. So
Yeah, I'm bougie, as my wife likes to call it. My first tarot deck was the Illuminati tarot, and it's got the nice gilded edges.
oh yeah, the gilded edges are so good.
We have a question. Do you combine divination systems like layering?
Yes, I do. I don't typically combine tarot and runes, but I'll usually combine one of those two and astrology. So I'll use astrology to kind of figure out the timing, and then I'll use tarot or runes to get a little bit more of a clear picture on it. Because, for example, if I see that I'm going to be taking a hit with money in the stars, and it's going to happen around this time, I could then do other divination through tarot or runes and see a little bit more about what it might be about. So if I can see that I'm going to have a financial hit, and then either the cards or the runes show it's going to be through transportation, like I can get either Rhino or the Chariot, I can see, well, it's probably going to be a car issue. So maybe I go take my car to the shop now and avoid the really major issues. So instead of having like engine failure because something really fucked up, I could go in early, get that checked out, save myself a big bill, and then maybe my tire pops and I still have to pay for that, but I've avoided some of that. So I would say I would combine divination in that way, but I don't usually do tarot and runes because that feels a little bit redundant in a weird way.
Okay. Um, Kind of going back to astrology a little bit. So I'm going to share one aspect of my chart. I'm not giving out the whole thing because we
Mm-hmm.
don't do astro nudes here.
Yeah.
Um, so I am a uh, uh, Aquarius rising. That's my ascendant sign. Um, and like I said, I mean I know I'm a Leo from my sun sign, but I was like, what is the connection between my ascendant sign and my sun sign, and how do those interact? You know what I mean?
Yeah, so with just knowing those two placements, I would say it also will depend on where your Saturn is. But it could be that maybe you feel a little bit at odds with trying to be yourself versus trying to fit the image of what others want, or focusing too much on others' needs versus your own needs. And again, this would also depend on the relationship with Saturn, because where Saturn is will also dictate a little bit of that, and Saturn will be a strong influence because it rules your ascendant. Being a Leo sun means the sun gets to shine strong, it gets to be bright, and it does want a little of that, attention, the me. But Saturn as a relationship, like those two are dead opposite, and so I find that Aquarius risings in particular, and Capricorn risings too, they have such a weird relationship with, like, I want to be seen, but I also want to be able to move without the attention fully being focused on me. So it can be a weird dichotomy where like I want the attention, but also I don't. I want my work recognized, but I don't know that I want the spotlight, but also it'd be nice to be in the spotlight. So it can be this kind of weird dichotomous relationship where you're fighting against yourself, versus, like if others are expecting you to do all this, but you kind of just want to work on your own. The sun being a little bit more of a social thing too, versus Saturn being a little bit more of a loner type. So it's a weird dichotomy relationship that you see there.
Okay. It kind of makes sense. I like, I wouldn't say I like being the center of attention, but I have a love-hate relationship with being in public.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have to share that. Speaking of which,
Yes, very good. The cat's
I
always
had a
paying
fur
attention.
I had a fur baby. I wasn't sure if she was going to come down and come visit my live or not, but that is baby,
Baby.
for all those interested. But yeah, so let's see, how much time do we have left? We have 20 minutes, so we're still good on time. Trying to think. Do you have any questions for me, or anything that you want to discuss?
I guess for you, because I always find it interesting. What is it about astrology that interests you, and how much studying into it have you done? Because I know that that can always be a little bit like the desire to go towards it, but also how much have you done with it, and where do people find stumbling blocks sometimes?
Most of my research into astrology has been done online. I haven't read too many books. I mean, between me and my wife, we have a fairly large and eclectic collection of pagan and occult books. Um, so she has like the Parker's astrology book, which you
That's a good one.
recommended.
Yep.
Um, and also, I believe I don't remember what the author's name was, but it was called Sun Signs, and then there's also like a sequel book, Moon Signs or Lunar Signs, one of the two.
Let me see if I can find that one, because I know I've heard of it before, but I'm just going to go on Bezos.com, Amazon, and look up lunar signs. Is it a... Well, there's a couple of things it could be. Moon signs? Is it a black cover with a wheel in the middle and then it says moon signs at the bottom?
The Sun Signs book was blue and yellow, I believe.
Let me see. Sun signs book. Blue and yellow. Is it Llewellyn's sun sign book?
Who's the author?
The
Is there an author?
author would be Alice DeVille.
I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay, because there's a couple things that it could be. There's a couple of books that sort of float around. I've not read that one in particular. I just know that there is a specific author that comes up with some of these searches named Mari Silva that I would avoid. But otherwise, yeah, that's fine. Ganymede, I did an episode with the weirdos, the heathen weirdos. One of their coffee breaks, we talk about rune astrology. So I have many thoughts on that one, and I don't know if we could. Can you put links in chat?
Um,
I don't think we can.
it says add a comment, so I can put the if you're able to, you should be able to copy and paste, I think. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the links will actually activate, like be clickable or not. But definitely, definitely consider sharing resources for sure. If you,
Yeah. I'm on my computer, like, so I have my computer here and then I have my phone here. So I'll I don't know that I can put it in chat without it sort of getting funky. But like, would Dino be able to post a link? Do you think?
um, I'm not sure. Dino, are you here?
Oh, okay. Kenna in chat just linked to Heathen Weirdos, their Instagram. So that should have links
Oh,
to their stuff. But
okay.
Yeah, Heathen Weirdos is where I did that. It's episode 6, The Absurdity of Runic Astrology. I have many thoughts. It's
Okay.
bad. That's my quick thought is runic astrology is bad and dumb and stupid. That's
Did
what the
you have a
title
bad
says.
experience with it?
Oh my god, we found this terrible website explaining it, and it was just like we divided everything up with the runes and astrology because, and that was about all of the logic, and
That's
you could
not a
have
really
like
great justification.
it was that was about all the justification they gave was cause that was
Okay. Oh, sorry. Also, I have mad respect for your brand of beverage. Um, it is officially the oldest soda pop in
ooh.
in in commercialization. It's older than Coca-Cola.
So I'm a traditionalist.
Yes, yes.
There you go.
Embrace tradition.
Embrace tradition of Dr.
Drink
Pepper.
Dr. Pepper.
That's that's what the ad should be. Embrace tradition. Drink Dr.
Yep.
Pepper.
Okay,
Traditional
so
astrology, traditional soda.
yep. Uh, S 0921 Nichols asked, astrology seems to be given a sinister connotation in Lord of the Rings, at least the part about Denethor and the Stuart Kings becoming obsessed with it. Are you a Tolkien fan?
Um,
I'm
I'm not so much in like the lore. I watch the movies and that's about it.
okay. I'm sort of so. I like the lore, but um, I know I'm probably going to get hit for this, but I've only actually read The Hobbit.
That's yeah, that's more than me. I've never even read any of the books. I think that astrology could be sinister. I mean, you certainly could become obsessed with it to the point where it has different effects. I have spoken a few times publicly about how some people take it really far, especially with social media. It's often in like a way of being really insensitive. I also have, a lot of thoughts on that. I've spoken about that before about
Yeah,
the
with like celebrity
morality.
death.
So I think that in a way it can be very sinister in that sense, where we start to forget about the human element and the reasons why we're using astrology and get obsessed with trying to make all these predictions and make really big predictions and showy predictions without really thinking about the impact that it has on people. So I could certainly see that, or using it for sinister purposes would also be one of the other ones. So it could be a number of ways that I definitely see how they could get that. But I mean, astrology for a while was demonized, especially by the church. And they had to make specific arguments to say that astrology is Christian, actually. And William Lilly is one of the big names you'll hear for Christian astrology, where they had to argue with the church and say it's good, actually, it's with God, actually. And so for a while they're trying to demonize it as being it's pagan and therefore we can't use it. It's of the devil. So especially if you added a little bit of that Christian element, I could see why it would be demonized.
Okay. And I think we have enough for one final question. Um, let me, here we go. I think I lost it. There we go. Does Celtic tree astrology and primal zodiacs also have the absurdity of runic astrology? Ganymedes posted
I've
that.
I've not done a lot of looking into those. I believe Celtic astrology is probably also that same level. I've never heard of the other one. I don't even know what that would be. Probably. I feel like with the studying that I've done, if it were something that were a normal thing to use in astrology or a normal part of it, I would have at least heard the term by now. So it's probably something that's pretty new age, if I'm being honest. Was it primal astrology? Is that what that was called?
Um, yeah, primal zodiacs.
Primal zodiacs. Is that like you're like assigning an animal to the stars, like a spirit animal type thing?
I'm not sure. This is the first time I've heard of it.
Is it just primalastrology.net? Is that the right one, Ganymede? Because They're selling NFTs. I'm gonna die.
I,
Jesus.
I always say NFTs are like going to end up like the comic book crash of the 1990s.
Oh, this is just rebranded Chinese Zodiac. That's
Oh,
what this
really?
is. Yeah.
Interesting.
That's weird. Okay. Yeah, that's really strange. Yeah, it just looks like a rebrand of you know, Chinese Zodiac. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Yeah, if it's a late 2000s thing, then yes, that was it's just a mashing together of everything for no reason. It's just dumb.
Let's see. Um, what are your
Hi,
final
Elo.
thoughts?
Oh, sorry, Elo just joined. Hi. Final
Oh,
thoughts.
hello.
I think we should allow ourselves to be a little bit more creative with how we introduce astrology to our practices. I think that often we get so scared because there's so many details to learn, but you can start incorporating these things without having all that much knowledge. Like if you know Mars is more malefic in the daytime and more constructive at night, and that Saturn is more constructive in the daytime, that you could use those in a way that is helpful or what have you, and you can start using them in your spell work. It can enhance planetary magic that you're already doing because you can do that without necessarily knowing astrology, but the astrology helps. And I think that often people say it looks too hard, it looks too complicated, but when you just break it down to the bare bones, it's not as scary as it seems. Once you know how to look at a chart, like it's not even like interpretive what it means, but aw, Elo, you're so nice. Dot is really cool, isn't he? um, so once you can know, like, this is what a house is, this is what a house looks like, this is where the signs are, this is how to know what sign Mars is in, this is how to know what is squaring another planet. Once you know how to look at that and you can tell, okay, this is what a circle chart means and looks like, then you can feel less fear and you can start to break it down. So if you don't know what it means when the moon is squaring Mars in these signs, well, you can just go, okay, the moon is, I'll go with where we are basically right now. So the moon in a couple of hours, because I advanced it to have Aquarius rising. In a few hours, the moon will be in Aquarius. So it will be squaring the sun and it will be squaring Uranus. So what does that mean? You could go moon, Aquarius. What does that mean? Sun, Taurus. What does that mean? Square. What does that mean? Moon, square, sun. What does that mean? And then you put it all together, moon in Aquarius, square, sun in Taurus. Just put all the significations together. And when you just go baby step by baby step, that's easy. Done. That you just sort of throw it all together. It can feel really awkward at first, and being able to make a smooth delineation of like the moon in Aquarius is squaring the sun in Taurus, therefore, that takes a little time. But once you get a little bit comfortable and you watch some of the transits happen and you can sort of observe how they're going, making the other ones is a lot easier.
Okay, so basically it's like a math equation, but instead of numbers and letters, it's different signs and aspects within the chart.
Yeah, exactly. It's just relational. So these two planets have this relationship. This is in this position. This is influenced in this way. So, like, the moon in Aquarius is essentially saying moon Saturn. So it's the moon acting in a Saturn way, or it's the moon in a Saturn environment, therefore acting with the sun in a particular relationship, which the sun is in Taurus, the sun is acting in a Venus way. And that's the way that you look at it. So it's moon Saturn, square aspect, sun Venus. And so you just sort of put them together, you mash them in a pot, and that's what they look like. Like that's just what that delineation is going to turn out to be.
Okay, interesting. Except, not to be a dork, but I'm totally going to be a dork here by throwing this out. But that doesn't mean that seven into 28 equals 13.
Exactly. Yep. It's still going to have some kind of meaning. There's options. So it's sort of like the font that you write 28 in or the font that you write 4 in. Like there's different ways it can come about and it's going to look differently for every person. So that's why you compare it with like, those specific charts. But moon Saturn is always going to mean moon Saturn things. And Sun Taurus, Sun Venus is always going to mean certain things. So like Sun Venus isn't going to look in a way that Sun Mars is going to look. And so you have to understand that you can't just be like, oh, the sun is in Venus, therefore you're going to cut your foot. Like it doesn't really translate that way. There's options, and maybe it's not so good for some people versus another. But I mean, it's just not going to look the way Sun Mars is going to look. So there is a certain amount of equation you do have to follow, and a certain amount of rules that get followed. Even though there are options, it doesn't mean that anything is possible. It means that there's a number of options that are possible. You have like this versus this.
Right. I wanted to ask you, because if this is okay or not. But would you like to make your announcement here as you made on Twitter?
Yeah, I wanted to let people know, and I announced it on Twitter. If you're not following me on Twitter, I've made the super hard decision to leave the podcast. I had a really great time, especially with a lot of our guests that we had on, super stellar people. But I'm working full time now, and I wasn't, last year. I have a lot more responsibilities. I want to dedicate back again to the YouTube channel and everything. So it's been really tough, but I've decided to step away. It takes a lot of time to record, to edit, to post, and I know it really sucks, and it sucked to make the decision, but I've been thinking about it for a while, especially since the move and everything, and it just doesn't feel fair to like put in a half effort on something that I know I can't fully dedicate to, and to fully like be neglecting something else. And I felt like I had a little bit more to say with my own channel and stuff I wanted to do with my own channel. It's all for the best. It's just because I want to put in my fullest effort with the things that I want to dedicate to, rather than the half effort and everything. So I've loved my time. It's been great. Like I said, being able to have the conversations and the guests that we were able to have was amazing, but I just think it's time.
Yeah, it was definitely awesome to have you on that show with Georgina and Anthony and Temperance also.
Yeah.
You'll be greatly missed, but I am so looking forward to seeing all the new content that you're going to be creating on your own platform, and I'm super excited for you. And unfortunately, with that, I think our time is almost up. It is we have 3 or 4 minutes left. So I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on, and I hope to have you back at some point. It was really nice chatting with you. Um,
Yeah, this was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed myself. So I mean, like, fully, if you want to hit me up and do this again in the future, we'll have to schedule it out far enough that I know, because my schedule is still going to be super busy even without the podcast. But yeah, I'd love to come back on. And for those of you asking, yeah, I still plan to do streams. I'm not sure what that's going to look like, because I don't know if I'm going to end up doing more solo stuff, just because I want to focus more on the solo stuff. So we'll see. I do still plan to stream. I just don't know if it'll stay with that frequency. There's a lot of stuff that I'm shifting right now. Some of the scheduling was because of where the podcast at. So I'll keep everybody updated. But I've been trying to figure some of that out. So it's a little bit of a disjointed change right now, because leaving the podcast does just change a couple of things. But I do still plan to stream. So that's the plan.
all right, awesome. Well, you have a great night. It was awesome talking to you, and it was awesome for all of you guys here to join us. And you all have a wonderful night. 93 and blessed be.
93 blessed be. Bye, everyone.